All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, it took some time, but Kentucky has their next head basketball coach as Mark Pope will be replacing John Calipari, who departed to go to Arkansas. Now, Pope is very familiar with Kentucky, of course, as he was a member of their 1996 national championship team and a captain on that team to boot. But the question is going to be, is Pope the guy that will keep Kentucky as a national brand? Now, in 5 seasons as the head coach at BYU, Pope's record was 110 and 52. He was 49 and 29 in conference games. Of course, part of that was in the West Coast Conference, where BYU was before joining the Big 12 this past season. But the things that are probably going to be head scratching and eye opening for Kentucky fans, at least, Pope has never won an NCAA tournament game. He got the Cougars there twice. You could have made the case for them in 2020, of course, but there was no postseason that year. But nonetheless, he's never won an NCAA tournament game. And of course, the early exits from the NCAA tournaments in recent years, I guarantee you, played a part in John Calipari no longer being the head coach at Kentucky. So for me, I'll tell you like this: it's not a sizzle hire, if you will. It's a comfort hire, and it's a hire where, you know what? Okay, it's the best option available. I'm not saying that Mark Pope is not going to do good things in Kentucky, but if you're Kentucky, you went out there and you swung for the fences. You went out there, you know, you reached out to Dan Hurley. He said no. Turned around and offered him even more money. The second time around, he still said no. He wanted to stay at UConn. You went after Scott Drew at Baylor. He said no. Okay. Billy Donovan decided to remain in the NBA with the Bulls. Okay. Nate Oates decided to remain in Alabama. So it was on to that next tier of head coaches if you're Kentucky. Was it going to be Mark Pope? Was it going to be Brad Underwood at Illinois? Um, Guys of that, ilk. Who was going to go out there and be the next guy to lead Kentucky? And clearly, after being rejected so many times, the powers that be in Lexington decided to, roll with Mark Pope. Now, it's one of those typically when you see, an alum of the school come back to coach the school, typically, he's welcomed with open arms. And I'm really going to be interested to see, how the folks in Lexington, embrace Mark Pope in one of these situations. That's going to be the big thing going forward for Kentucky. Now, plain and simple, Mark Pope is not John Calipari, and he's not going to be getting McDonald's All Americans out the wazoo like Coach Cal did, because I do believe that Mark Pope is going to have to rely on his system, especially at the beginning. He's already lost. Kentucky has already lost commitment due to Calipari's departure. I guarantee you, some of them are going to pop up at Arkansas with him. And for Mark Pope, he does have the transfer portal, and he's going to have to get busy in there to keep Kentucky upon among those upper echelon schools in the very brutal and tough SEC. Remember, we just saw 8 teams from the SEC make the NCAA tournament last month. So that just gives you an idea of the depth of the conference. It's one of those where I've talked about it over the last week, the pressure to win and then the Kentucky pressure to win. And it's going to be interesting to see how Mark Pope is going to be able to deal with all of that. Now, yes, Pope is part of the Kentucky family. Okay, there's no way around that. But how patient is the fan base there going to be with him? You look at this Kentucky program that Mark Pope has taken over. They have not won the SEC tournament since 2018. And I know people are going to say, well, that was only 6 years ago. That is a lifetime when you think about Kentucky basketball. And since that time, the folks in Lexington have had to sit back and watch both Alabama and Auburn win the SEC tournament twice, while Tennessee has won it once. And you want to go out there, you want to have a coach that's going to bring you championships, both SEC championships as well as trips to the Final Four, and of course the big one I'm talking about, the national championship. Now, Pope, this is a very tough job. Kentucky by itself is a tough job. Okay, but then replacing John Calipari is not easy for what he has meant to them for the past 15 years. And then on top of that, it's not helping, and I don't think it's going to help Mark Pope, that the guy that he was hired to replace is still in the same conference. Now, Arkansas was very relevant under Eric Musselman. They did not have a good year this season. The Razorbacks only went 6-12 in the SEC as they finished 12th. I guarantee you the Razorbacks will not be that bad come next season. And what's going to happen if the guy that Mark Pope just replaced in John Calipari, I don't know what the schedule is going to look like next season, but what happens if Kentucky faces Arkansas and Arkansas comes to Lexington and Arkansas wins? I guarantee you that's not going to go well for Mark Pope there. It's kind of course, John Calipari is not Nick Saban, all right, but it's kind of in that same realm where all of those coaches that were at LSU after Nick Saban left, and Nick Saban came back into the SEC at Alabama. Basically, anytime they lost to Alabama, they were basically on the hot seat after that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out for Mark Pope at Kentucky. This is a program, no Final Fours since 2015. We know that. No national championship since 2012. And it's going to be it's going to be important, okay, for Mark Pope to not only win, but he's got to make sure, not even find a way. He has to make sure that he's able to keep Kentucky among the upper echelon teams in the SEC. A lot has changed, okay, on the college basketball landscape. It's not set up, if you will, for like one school or maybe two schools to dominate a conference. And you look at the SEC right now. Tennessee has a darn good program under Rick Barnes. You think about Bruce Pearl at Auburn, Nate Oates at Alabama, even Buzz Williams at Texas A&M, just to name a few. And of course, Chris Beard is in this league. You're bringing in Oklahoma and Texas next season, so it's going to be very, and I mean very important for Kentucky and Mark Pope to not get caught up in the wash in that league. So, will he be able? Excuse me, to keep Kentucky among the upper echelon basketball programs in the SEC? That is going to be the $1 million question. I will say this though, Mark Pope, every step of the way as a head coach, has won. He won at Utah Valley. He won at BYU, and of course, recruiting and things like that are a little bit different at BYU. And more importantly, he's not coming to Lexington as a stranger. He knows, this program very intimately. I'll tell you like this: this is a very important hire for Kentucky AD Mitch Barnhart. Uh, but I'm really going to be interested to see how things work out for Mark Pope at Kentucky. He's a guy that I think he can win, but I think it comes down to patience. And I think that is going to be the key word right there. How patient will the folks in Lexington be with Mark Pope? If he's a, if it, I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing where we're going to be talking about, okay, Mark Pope comes in and leads Kentucky to a Final Four appearance in 2025. If it happens, okay, tickle me wrong. That's fine. But I think it will take some time. However, like I said, patience will be the key. How patient will the folks be there? But like I said before, it doesn't help Pope's case that the guy that he is replacing is still in this conference. So it's one of those where, Kentucky swung for the fences. Like I said, they did not get the home run hire. Sometimes not getting the home run hire, works in your favor. It's, a 50-50 scenario. So let's see what's going to be next for Mark Pope and Kentucky as this storied basketball program looks to get on track or get back on track and do their thing, if you will, in the Southeastern Conference. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.